Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk about all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges that we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we could go from living a life of simply just being sober to a life where we're both sober and happy. Today, I want to talk about a concept that's been on my mind a lot recently: taking ownership of your life, even when it feels like the world is against you. In this episode, we will discuss how we can begin to take ownership of our recovery, how to battle our excuses not to change, and how to start living boldly and authentically. So buckle up. This is going to be a great episode. Welcome back. If you're here today, it means you're ready to confront the challenges that stand between you and a better life. I will warn you in advance that we're going to get real today and face some uncomfortable truths. But I promise you it'll be worth it, and we will navigate those hard truths together. So let's begin. Let me start with the story that I think really hits home. I was on day 2 of a Tony Robbins conference I attended years ago. If you haven't attended one of his events, it isn't just him standing up there talking on stage. You get a workbook you complete during the days you are there, and there are frequent breaks to get into groups and discuss the sections that we just finished. Most of this was about challenging and breaking through your limiting beliefs. When we'd get into the groups, I usually found myself talking about the reasons that I had struggled in life. I would talk about traumas that happened to me when I was young that I ended up trying to bury down with alcohol. I talked about my struggles with maintaining relationships and pointed the finger at some of my past girlfriends who I felt did me wrong and damaged me. I found an outside reason for every single struggle I faced that justified why I became stuck in various parts of my life. It was similar to the story I told while I was drinking, that if you went through the things that I did, you would drink too. But even though I was several years sober at this point, I was still using the same story for being stuck in my sober life. At various times, Tony would go into the audience and ask someone to share what they wrote in the last exercise. He chose a woman and asked her to tell her story. This woman was born dirt poor, and I'm not using that term loosely. She was literally born on a dirt floor of her parents' shack in India. She was also born completely blind. When she was still a baby, her mom placed her on a bench at a bus stop and left her there, where she was eventually found by a police officer and taken to an orphanage. As she continued her story, everybody in the room was crying, but I noticed she was not. She was beaming, and her smile lit up the entire room. As she kept talking, she talked about everything she was grateful for. She knew that her mom, in their living circumstances, had no way to take care of a little blind girl, and that her mom leaving her at that bus stop was an act of love. She talked about how it made it possible for a couple in Canada to adopt her and give her a fantastic upbringing. Now, she did get a little teary-eyed when she talked about getting her seeing eye dog, which has opened up so many possibilities for her that she didn't have before, but those were tears of joy. She didn't blame her mom for anything. She didn't blame being blind for any of her limitations. She was full of hope. Now, why am I sharing this? Because her story is the perfect example of what it means to take ownership of your life. She could have easily given up and accepted the limitations placed on her by the past, having been abandoned by her mother and living in a society that makes it hard to navigate as a blind person. But instead, she chose to see opportunity, to keep going, to live her life as fully as possible. Now, I want to talk about how this applies to recovery. You might feel like you've been given a raw deal in life. Maybe you face trauma, loss, or have been battling addiction for longer than you care to admit. It's easy to feel like the world is against you, like the odds are stacked so high that there's no point of even trying. But here's the truth. No matter what you've been through, you have the power to change your life. You have the power to take ownership of your recovery and your future. This isn't about pretending that challenges aren't real, because they are. This isn't about minimizing your feelings or pushing down the grief from experiences in your past. It's about recognizing that you are stronger than those challenges and making the decision not to let your past define who you are today. It's about committing to yourself that you will be the person in charge of navigating your path in life. One of the biggest hurdles I see in people trying to overcome addiction is a mindset of waiting for the perfect moment to get sober, waiting for the right support, waiting for everything to line up just right. But the reality is, there will never be a perfect moment. Life doesn't work that way. The longer you wait, the more you build up anticipation, making it seem worse than it actually is. The perfect moment is the one you create by taking action now. Now, let's talk about consistency. In recovery, consistency is everything. It's about showing up every single day, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel like it. It's about committing daily to yourself, to your sobriety, and to your growth. Now, you might be thinking, but Tim, I've tried being consistent before and I keep falling off. I hear you. And let me tell you, it's not about never falling down. It's about getting back up every single time. It's about having the resilience to keep moving forward even when you stumble. Consistency in recovery doesn't mean perfection. It means persistence. One of the biggest blockages to taking ownership in our life is our own excuses, and we all have them. I can't stay sober because I'm too stressed. I don't have the right support system. I've tried before and failed, so why bother? The list goes on. But here's the hard truth. Excuses are what hold you back from the life you deserve. Every time you give in to an excuse, you're giving up a piece of your power, a piece of your potential, and each one moves you a little further from the life that you deserve. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Stop waiting for someone else to fix your life. Stop waiting for circumstances to be perfect. Take ownership. Take responsibility. It all starts with you. And yes, that's a heavy burden, but it's also incredibly empowering because when you take ownership, you take control. One of the hardest things I've done in my recovery was deciding to leave Alcoholics Anonymous. I had known for years that the program didn't align with the recovery I wanted in my life, but I had become dependent on it. I followed completely laid out instructions from a book on how to live my life. Whenever I felt bad, instead of dealing with the emotion, I went to a meeting to feel better. My instinctual response to feeling bad had become, I need a meeting. When I had a decision I was struggling with, I went to my sponsor and essentially let him tell me what to do. Now, I'm not blaming Alcoholics Anonymous for my lack of ownership of my own life, emotions, and decision. It was just an environment that allowed me to continue not to take complete ownership of my life. It had become my new excuse. Was it scary to leave what had become my security blanket? It was absolutely petrifying. But I knew it was what was going to be best for me, so I had to face the fear and begin to take ownership of my recovery and my life. This didn't mean I stopped seeking support and guidance, but I accepted that the choices in my life were my own, not somebody else's, and not dictated by my past. They were 100% mine to make and 100% mine to take responsibility for. Finally, I want to talk about living boldly. Recovery isn't just about quitting substances. It's about reclaiming your entire life. Think of recovery as more than just stepping out of the darkness. It's about stepping into the light of who we truly are. It's about embracing your authentic self, pursuing your passions, and refusing to let fear run your life. This is your chance to finally show up fully and without reservation, to live unapologetically as a person you were always meant to be. Imagine for a moment that you're standing at the edge of a cliff looking out at the ocean. The cliff represents your old life, the one controlled by addiction and fear. The ocean is your future. It is vast, deep, and full of possibilities, but between you and that future is a leap of faith. It is intimidating, and the fear of what might happen if you jump can be overwhelming. But here's the thing. Staying on that cliff means staying stuck. The only way to truly embrace your future is to take that leap, to dive headfirst into the unknown with trust in your own resilience and strength. Too often, we let the fear of judgment hold us back. But the truth is, those fears will always be there, lurking in the background, whispering doubts in your ear. The key isn't to eliminate fear because that's impossible. The key is acknowledging its presence, but choosing not to let it run your life. When you choose to live boldly, you are choosing to pursue your recovery with everything you've got. You're choosing to leap off that cliff, not knowing exactly where you'll land, but trusting that you'll find solid ground. And when you take that leap, Don't look back. Don't second guess your decision. Trust that the ocean of possibilities before you is worth the risk, and that by embracing your true self, you'll find a life more fulfilling than you ever imagined. Living boldly is about more than just surviving. It's about thriving. It's about taking the reins of your life and steering it in your chosen direction, no matter how rough the waters might seem. So ask yourself, what's holding you back from that leap? What fears are keeping you anchored to the cliff's edge? And more importantly, are you ready to break those chains and dive into the life you deserve? I know I am, and I hope you are too. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. Here's your weekly challenge. I want you to look at one area of your life where you've been making excuses, waiting for the perfect moment, or for someone else to step in. I challenge you to commit to taking ownership of that area. Remember, it all starts with you. The change you're looking for, the life you want to live, is all within your reach, but you must go out and get it. No one else can do it for you. So what's it going to be? Will you keep letting life happen to you, or will you take control and create the life that you deserve? That is my challenge for you this episode. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and keep living sober and happy.